Let the niggas know not to do them part.
I don't really. It doesn't matter. It'll be fine. Oh.
Online, I was just introduced to it. The interview will be done in silence from here because we have connection problems. I will write in the questions that you will answer us. Hang on.
Because it must literally just be the connection in this house because I tried it on my phone. So it's not connected.
Just not connected.
Well, what can you do?
Show must go on.
True, true. My name is Kari Lucas, and I'm 20 years old. I started producing when I was about 17. I was in high school. I actually got turned on to production because of knowledge originally. I was watching his Boiler Room session in LA around, I think it was in December of 2013, and it really inspired me to start producing and DJing. So I got FL Studio at first, and then I was just using my computer and like the keyboard on it. I didn't have any equipment or anything back then, and I just like started downloading drum samples and stuff and trying to make beats that way. But it wasn't until like summer of 2014 or so that I was actually making anything that was decent. I think just like because I've been listening to hip hop so much and seeing that anybody could do it when they start doing it, I felt like why not? And you know, I've always felt like art is a really good way to express yourself and just communicate things with people in ways that you might not be able to, or communicate with people that you might not ever actually meet. So I wanted to start trying to express myself and have an outlet in that sort of way. Right now I use Ableton Live, and I use the Ableton Push sometimes for MIDI, or I use just like a regular MIDI keyboard and some monitors. I have this Korg Poly 61 synthesizer from 1983 that I make a lot of my sounds with. It's really big. I would show it to you, but it's in the other room, and it's like huge and it's hard to move. And then sometimes I'll just like use a microphone to record vocals or get someone else to come in and record instruments, or, you know, just make sounds out of natural household sounds and stuff and record that in. But my setup's pretty simple. I actually grew up listening to a lot of classical music and a lot of random like hip hop and soul and just, I guess, like alternative music. I know my mom used to play a lot of Bjork and like Sade and a lot of just all over the place when I was growing up. But I also vividly remember when I would go to sleep, she would always have classical music playing. So it was just this sort of strange mix of different types of music all the time. And I guess that probably contributed to the kind of music I make now. lately I still listen to classical music a lot. When I go like crate digging, I always end up buying classical records, or I listen to a lot of jazz too. I like to listen to jazz fusion, like John Clemmer, Herbie Hancock, those kinds of people. And then I listen to a lot of like underground hip hop. The main stuff I listen to, if it's not old music, is stuff my friends make. So like people on the labels I'm on, or people that I've worked with that are still making music. I try and keep up with all of them. I actually just released an EP called Marauder on November 30th through Dusty International. You can find that on my SoundCloud. Now I think I'm taking a bit of a break from releasing stuff because I've put out so much stuff in the past year. Like I've put out something like 8 projects and over 100 songs in 2015. So I'm really trying to focus on expanding my sound and work on a full project for maybe summer of 2016 that will be the next major step of me evolving my sound. My last collaboration was with Infinite Freefall, who we both grew up here in Charleston, South Carolina. He recently moved to LA, and I was living in Houston while he was driving through the country to get there. And so he stayed at my house overnight, and we made an entire EP together. And that is also on my SoundCloud. It came out through First Year. It came out a couple months ago, I think. And yeah, that was the last thing I collaborated on. Yeah, it was actually, he came by around 8 or so, and we just stayed up all night making stuff. I'm really, really picky about collaboration. I think it's really important for the people collaborating to both have something to contribute to each other and both really get along well and feed off of each other. So with the two of us, we would just sort of switch between me working on the computer and him using it, or me building a synth while he was like working on a drum line, or I would just sit there and design a synth for a while, and then I would let him try and play a chord progression. And it just went really naturally. And when one person, sort of got tired or ran out of ideas, the next person would sit down and start working on it, and we just kept going. I definitely do. Going through high school and middle school, I wouldn't say I was socially awkward, but I didn't, I guess, fit in, so to say. And to get through a lot of the rough times I would go through then, I would just listen to music, and I would try and relax and get to know myself and learn how to deal with my emotions and my issues. And music has always really helped with that. And then just like the power of listening to somebody else who may be having the same feelings as you, or even just, create sounds that you can connect to in some way that you can't necessarily explain. It can really help bring you a sort of peace and resolution when you can't get that from maybe talking to someone or in any other way. I think maybe one time my music has helped someone. When I was in my first year of college in 2013, me and all of my friends started a label together that is no longer running, but we all grew up like or at least in high school, came up together, like listening to the same types of music and like making music together, but none of us were really playing shows or anything. So I started going to open mics and just like playing my music out at venues. And eventually I found a venue that would let me host shows. And so I was able to sort of bring the experience of getting to play to all of my friends and sort of introduce them into the world of performing live and like actually having people hear their music. And that was really cool. The electronic music scene in Charleston, um, it's really just starting to exist. When I started playing out, there was nobody else that I knew of who really made music similar to mine. There still aren't very many people I know that make music similar to mine. Because Charleston is sort of a college town, or downtown Charleston is a college town, and that's where all of the venues and events happen. And so they sort of bring in like EDM artists and stuff, but that's not what I'm really into. So it's sort of hard to get support for the kind of music I make, but I'm really grateful to be able to say that as time's gone on, I've found more opportunities. And I think going forward, I'll be able to help contribute to what might become a bigger electronic music scene. I don't think I would relocate back to Houston, even though Houston honestly has an incredible music scene. I think if I were to relocate, it would be New York would be a possibility because I have family there and I have friends up there and on the East Coast and just in the New England area. I would also possibly relocate to LA because that's the West Coast is another major area that I have a lot of friends. I'm gonna wait till I have my degree before I make like a major move, and then I'm gonna decide then based on where I am. But really, there's so many other places that could be really cool. You know, I could go to the UK or Canada. There's so much music happening out there. You know, the possibilities are pretty much endless, and I'll just have to see what I do when I do it. Okay. Oh wow. I did not expect you to ask me that. Um, I think that what happened at the church here was, I think it was an indication of how serious the race relation issues in the United States are. I think it was an act of domestic terrorism, which is a relatively obvious thing to say, but there are a lot of people who, for some reason, don't like to acknowledge that kind of thing as terrorism. I think that there should have been the response that was given by the city, and I was not living in Charleston when it happened. I only saw how Charleston responded through all of my friends I grew up with. But there was sort of a coming together on social media and for like one big march type thing to say that Charleston was unified and stood together or and whatnot. But I personally felt like there wasn't a lot of outreach to the actual Black community and to those who might have been affected or those who knew people in the church. Or, you know, I felt like there was a very comfortable attempt to say that we don't tolerate what happened, but I felt like there could have been a lot more done to sort of step out of our comfort zones and really examine systematic racism and the effects of racism in our own communities. And I think that's the step that needs to be taken to truly prevent these kinds of things. Yeah, of course. Preparing mixes is always interesting for me, just because before I got good at producing, I was DJing. I started doing them at the same time, but I got good at DJing before I got good at producing. And so I always am thinking about the overall vibe of the mix and like how it'll translate. And then especially like preparing a mix for, you know, all of you out in Brazil. I don't really know anything about the music scene there. I didn't really know what to pick. So I sort of just tried to do my best to provide an atmosphere that reflected what I like to listen to, but was still, you know, various enough to show the range of my tastes, but also to remain cohesive. It was also really exciting to get to show you all what I make and what I listen to, and sort of share those vibes.
Thank you for being here tonight with us. That was incredible. I felt really good. Our main initiative in Brazil, you know. That's it.
Cool.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you.